pads are strapped on and the fans are in the stands as Steelers camp heads to the North Shore and Heinz Field. Practices get the team prepared for game day and the major tasks at hand come September. We have you covered after a very busy week, too, from Pittsburgh. You are watching Steelers Training Camp All Access on KDKA TV.
Welcome to the FedEx Steelers Training Camp All Access Show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome once again to Steelers Training Camp All Access. I'm Bob Pompeani here in our KDKA studios, joined once again by the quarterback of the program, Charlie Batch. And Charlie, the team moved from the south side to Heinz Field. What's your take on holding camp in the city here versus going out to Latrobe and St. Vincent College?
After all these years, it's definitely different when you get to that point of having training camp here at Heinz Field, only because you don't have the interaction with the fans, and that's the part that players miss the most. But the Steelers did a nice job of really, going out there, relocating and putting the best situation for the fans to at least interact and be a part of training camp. And that's something that I enjoy because the energy that you feed off the crowd transitions onto the practice field. So I'm just excited that everybody gets the chance to be a part of it.
Now, your personal take, if you were back playing today, would you have rather gone up to St. Vincent?
Well, I think selfishly, I would love to sleep in my own bed. But as opposed to training camp beds or dorm beds where you're up there in Latrobe. But I think players, they have to adjust to it. Unfortunately, it's just something that you just have to deal with at this point. But if all is equal, players will want to go back up to Latrobe.
Yeah, I kind of like it up there too. Missed that, but hey, this is what it is. And it was a big week for Steelers camp. Not only did the team move from the south side to Heinz Field, they put on pads and started to hit, and they let fans into the building to watch for the very first time since, really think about it, 2019. For more on those happenings, let's bring in my colleague, Rich Walsh. Rich, what was it like?
All right, thanks a lot, Bob. The Steelers made the move over to Heinz Field this week. The first practice was on Tuesday, and on Wednesday they welcomed fans for the first time in nearly 2 years with some hard hitting. So it was a big week for the Steelers. They put the pads on Wednesday for the first time this camp, which means the highly anticipated drill backs on backers.
It's more of an attitude drill. It's an opportunity to get to know some of these people. I think we all saw that, Naji likes competition and he doesn't run away from it, he runs to it. And that was something about the drill that was exciting from my perspective.
And one of the standouts for the first day in pads, and for that matter, the first week of practice, was first-round draft pick Naji Harris, which should be music to everyone's ears considering how bad the Steelers' run game has been lately.
Really everybody wanted to see him for obvious reasons. His demeanor was telling. It was exciting that he had an appetite for that action. I'm not rushing to judge or draw conclusions or seek comfort. We're all kind of in that mindset, right? We drafted the guy in the first round. You can trick yourself into believing everything. Boy, he's ready to go. No, it was just one practice. It was a good practice, and we'll see what the subsequent practices have for us in that regard.
Here we go, Steelers! Here we go!
The Steelers also welcomed fans for the first time this camp. The Steelers gave away 6,300 tickets for Wednesday's practice, and every single person was happy to be back inside.
Go Steelers! I've been a Steelers fan since I can remember. My family's been Steeler fans for life, just kind of born and bred.
Make sure that I got to see the Black and Yellow Nation, which has been nothing but the best experience ever.
I talked to the main man upstairs. If it weren't for him, none of us would be here doing this.
The defense is going to be elite this year, so I'd like to see how it looks now with some of our guys gone and with the new guys.
And not only were the fans happy to be back watching and cheering in person again, the Steelers were energized with the atmosphere.
Man, it's just great, Man, they energize us. It's just been a tough year or so for all of us, and so, their presence is a signal that maybe we're moving on and out of it, and that's exciting.
It was good. I thought they brought a lot of energy to us. The music going, good atmosphere, and just a good vibe.
And yesterday, the Steelers held their first evening practice at training camp. Coach Tomlin took some time to speak to the fans and express his appreciation for them. A few thousand people were in attendance to watch a spirited practice that had a few dust-ups in the team sessions. Tons of excitement for the fans over on the North Shore this week, and that fun continues the next few weeks. There were a lot of people over there today. Here are the remaining dates that fans can check out training camp practices at Heinz Field. Admission is free to these workouts, but fans will need to register for tickets at Ticketmaster.com. Well, I was over at Heinz Field this week for camp, and so was the Post-Gazette's Gerry Dulac. What did you think about this week? What were your main takeaways?
Well, I'll tell you, Rich, the one thing that stood out to me the most, that was noticeable both in appearance and performance, was their third tight end, Zach Gentry. You know, this guy was a converted college quarterback, and now all of a sudden he doesn't look like a tall converted quarterback. He looks like an NFL tight end. He's a big guy, 6'8", 275 pounds. And so you notice him now on the football field. And the other reason you notice him, I've yet to see him drop a pass, much like Pat Freiermuth. You know, Pat Freiermuth will be their second tight end, but Zach Gentry, all of a sudden, he looks like a guy who can be a capable third tight end. He's athletic enough, being a former quarterback, and now with that size, I mean, it's very noticeable. You notice it right off the bat.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I've noticed. Both those guys are catching everything. What about defense? Anything stand out?
Yeah, Alex Highsmith. You know, this was a guy that they felt, you know, he had to start 5 or 6 games last year when Bud Dupree was injured. Bud Dupree is gone, as we know. Alex Highsmith right now is ahead of where Bud Dupree was going into his second year, and he showed it in the very first practice, very first live scrimmage play, not the very first live scrimmage play, the third and fourth one, when he stopped Naji Harris for losses of 2 and 3 yards. And they really like him. You know, they brought in Melvin Ingram, Rich, but they brought in Melvin Ingram to back up Alex Highsmith. They like this guy, and you saw it from the very first
Yeah,
practice.
I'm anxious to see how that whole thing shakes out. Thanks a lot, Gerry. Stick around later in the show. We're going to break down the Steelers' depth chart and some critical positions. Bob, back to you.
All right, thanks very much, guys. And Charlie, fans in the stands, does it make that much of a difference, even for training camp?
It really does. And when you just hear the sound bites of all of the players and they're telling you how energetic the fans were, trust me, they build off of that energy, because you realize that this may be the only time that the fans get an opportunity to see you, so you have to put your best performance on. You do not want the fans walking away questioning whether you can get it done if you had to step into a game. So that's why players love how accountable the fans keep them.
Team also put on pads for the very first time since the embarrassing loss to Cleveland in the playoffs. So what's your take on how the NFL has evolved its policy on padded practices? Do you like it, or would you want to see more of these? Because they've kind of limited as many times as you can be padded.
Well, I mean, I was a part of those discussions as it related how many padded practices you can have. And ultimately, yes, the coaches want to be in pads a lot more than others, but ultimately you want to make sure that your players are fresh heading into the regular season. So that's why there's a limitation on how many padded practices that you can have, because the ultimate goal is to make sure you can get through the season as healthy as possible. And right now, the Steelers are off to a good start.
All right, Charlie, thanks very much. More from you coming up. When we come back here on Steelers Training Camp All Access, we welcome a new member to our KDKA team, CBS sideline reporter A.J. Ross, who spoke with linebacker Robert Spillane about his second-year progression. That's coming up next.
Yeah. Welcome to the main event. Main event. Main event. Main event. Let's get ready to rumble. Nothing can make me crumble. Take a step into the jungle. It's war where the lions roar. The moment you've been waiting for. Get loud, Spillane Nation. Let's go. Welcome to the main event. Let the lights go down, and when the smoke clears, I'ma show you how. I can tell we gon' meet again. You leaving with a frown, me I'm leaving with the crown. How you like me now? Welcome to the main event.
Hopefully Watt will be doing a lot of that on the field this year. Pretty cool stuff there from Steelers TV, giving us a behind-the-scenes look at Team Photo Day. And speaking of pretty cool stuff, we added a new member to our team this week, CBS Sports sideline reporter A.J. Ross, who covered practice and asked the Steelers how things were progressing in camp, specifically at the linebacker spot.
Cohesion and chemistry take time, but with every snap here at Heinz Field, Coach Tomlin says they are getting closer and closer to those goalposts. He also noted how much progress has been made and how he's seen a lot of development with their skill sets and their mindset so far through training camp. High expectations and pressure in Pittsburgh are a constant, which is why the intangibles matter so much in training camp.
I just want everybody to progress, to build, to grow in terms of skill development relative to their position, to grow in terms of their football intellect. And I think all guys are bringing that mindset in terms of the work.
To truly thrive under pressure, preparation and cohesion are key, which is why linebackers Robert Spillane and Devin Bush are putting in extra work both on and off the field to ensure they're on the same page.
We play really well off each other. We have communications about it every day. So who's saying what certain communication, where we're talking to guys, aligning people. So
we're figuring each other out really well these first few days.
From watching extra film together to constantly talking through plays, Spillane knows the synergy of their tandem will be vital this season, with Coach Mike Tomlin noting how the example has consistently been set by their predecessors.
It's about cooperative work and communication in a tandem. And it's cool from my perspective because it's generational. You know, I watched it happen with Vince Williams and Ryan Shazier when they were young, and it's really kind of born out of that, and it's been passed down from duo to duo.
And another group that doesn't get a lot of praise or spotlight is special teams, but Tomlin on Thursday did make note to give them a bit of a shout out and say how much they have been battling as well at Heinz Field. I'm A.J. Ross, KDKA Sports.
All right, A.J., thanks very much, and welcome to the team. Nice to have you. Obviously, Spillane will be counted on to play a much bigger role in the defense this point last season by comparison. Here are a few things you may not know about him. After undergoing an undrafted status, he originally signed with the Titans before coming to Pittsburgh, where he was actually signed and released twice before sticking with the team. Last year, he made an impressive 40 tackles, a huge pick six against Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. Also, he's the grandson of former Heisman Trophy winner Johnny Latner, who was the Steelers drafted 1954, way back when. So we got some lineage there. Let's bring back Charlie Batch on more about Robert Spillane. What do you see out of him last year versus this year, and how more can he improve in that position?
He definitely can get better, and you heard Mike Tomlin talk about how Vince Williams was that guy and elevated up in stature, same way that Robert Spillane is doing, a fellow Mid-American Conference guy out of Western Michigan. You can see the respect that he continues to earn on this roster. And when you saw what happened last year against that Tennessee Titans team, when he stood Derrick Henry up on the goal line, that earned not only respect throughout this team, but throughout the league, because they knew that he was going to put his hat in the pile and he was going to be around the ball carrier. And he was having a solid season up until his injury happening last year. So they are expecting big things out of Spillane.
That was one of the hits that you remember. Signature hits, and he made one, man. That was awesome. All right, Charlie, thanks. Coming up, when we get in depth with the Steelers, depth chart coming up next, specifically a handful of positions that will be critical to their success in 2021. That's next.
Welcome back to the FedEx Steelers Training Camp All Access Show.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Steelers Training Camp All Access. Each year, you know, the Steelers induct former players, coaches, and contributors who were integral in sustaining the franchise's success. They go into the Hall of Honor, and today 4 more names announced as the 2021 inductees. This year, John Kolb, Louis Lips, Carnell Lake, and Tunchilkin all will be added to the Hall of Honor. A big congratulations to all those inductees. And with this being our last camp show, we thought it might be a good idea to kind of dive into the depth chart that was released by the team, specifically at a few key positions. And Charlie, I wanted to start by asking you about running back, because as expected, Naji Harris was named the starter. How much will he carry this load here, or do you think there'll be other guys behind him in a rotation? Who would they be?
He would get Naji Harris will get the majority of the reps, as everybody expects, because he's a 3-down back. But if we now look at who the second and third running back, I think Anthony McFarland right now probably gets the edge over Benny Snell at this point, only because they want to see what he's capable of doing if he can now pass block and add that added element to his game. So if he can do that, we'll see a little bit more of McFarland during the preseason than what we will for Benny Snell.
Interesting battle. They brought in Kalen Ballage as well. He may have a role in that. Obviously, for the backs to be successful and the quarterback, they need somebody to block for them. And when the depth chart was released, some people were a bit surprised who was named as the starting center. Rookie Kendrick Green was listed as the backup to J.C. Hassenauer. Now, Green's going to start in the Hall of Fame game. Who do you think starts at center and at guard when everything starts going for real?
Well, I think obviously Kendrick Green, he will be the starter at this point. I don't think anything shakes up between Turner and Dotson at this point. But when you look at where Kendrick Green is at, it reminds me of Marquise Pouncey when he was a rookie. The Steelers said, listen, let's not waste any more time. Give him all the reps at the start of training camp. And that's why you see what's happening with Kendrick Green at this point as the starter, because you want him to now build that rapport with Ben Roethlisberger.
There's no dispute that Ben Roethlisberger is the starting quarterback. Behind him, however, right now it's Mason Rudolph signed the $5 million extension. However, yesterday. It looked like Rudolph had some problems, threw a couple of picks. Haskins taking the first opportunity today behind Bent. Is there actual competition there? Do you think Haskins can supplant him?
Well, there is competition for sure. And, of course, everybody's high on Mason Rudolph within the Steelers organization. But when you're Mike Tomlin, he's always going to create that challenge and competition at the position. So he doesn't want Mason to be complacent. So now here you have a first-round talent in Dwayne Haskins. Those guys are battling back and forth each and every day, switching between who gets the second and third team reps. So there is a true competition at this point. Don't expect Ben Roethlisberger to play a lot in the preseason. Expect a lot of these two. And if you add Joshua Dobbs, of course, at that point, you have three solid quarterbacks all battling for two spots.
That's going to be something we'll look forward to in the preseason broadcast that we have. It should be interesting. Now let's switch over to the defensive side. More depth chart talk with you, and let's bring back Rich and Jerry, guys.
All right, thanks a lot, Bob. Jerry, the sudden retirement of Vince Williams, it really left the Steelers in a bit of a bind up the middle, hasn't it? And here's who they currently have on the roster. Devin Bush, Robert Spillane are your starters, but beyond that, they are pretty thin. Jerry, who do you think is the first one off the bench if one of these guys get hurt?
Well, Rich, one of the reasons why they brought Vince Williams back after they released him is because they know they have big holes in their depth there. The good news about having not a lot of types of players like Robert Spillane on the depth chart is that they're not in their 34 a lot. So most of the time they're in their nickel and dime package. And so then you're going to see either Ulysses Gilbert III, Marcus Allen. But that's why I mentioned even last week, it's a big camp for Buddy Johnson. That's their fourth-round pick. They really like this guy. This is a big opportunity for him to possibly move up that depth chart and be the top backup behind either one of those guys. But that's going to be up to him. But I think that's why he's a big key in his training camp.
And I think some opportunities at cornerback. So let's talk a little bit about that position. Hayden and Sutton are listed as the starters with Lane and Pierre right behind them. Is there any chance one of those two would unseat Sutton at a starting corner?
No, none. And the only way that those guys play on the outside is if they move Cam Sutton to the slot in their nickel defense. But right now, that battle is between Antoine Brooks and Arthur Millette, a fifth-year guy that they signed in the offseason. So if one of those two prove that they can play that position and be more effective as a nickel than James Pierre or Justin Lane can be as the outside corner, if Cam Sutton goes to the slot, that's what's going to determine where Cam Sutton is. But Cam Sutton is their outside corner. They're leaving him there at training camp because they want him to get comfortable there. They would like to leave him there, but those guys, either James Pierre or Justin Lane, cannot unseat him as a starter.
Another guy that might play into this with basically whatever defense that they're going to put out there is Trey Norwood, right?
Yeah.
The rookie.
You know, Rich, the other day, young guys have to do this. He had 2 picks during their practice, and when you do something like that, the coaches pay attention. You don't see Justin Lane do a whole lot of that. So he's not a guy who right away is going to play in to that slot position, but eventually that can happen. They have him at safety right now, and they're going to leave him there. They, a couple of years ago, if you remember, they kind of screwed up with Sean Davis that way. They put too much on his plate, and he became too confused, and then they finally just let him play at safety. They're going to do the same thing with Trey Norwood right now, but they really like him. You could see him maybe mid-season, late season, get more playing time.
And another guy that's been making plays there, too, is Antoine Brooks, who you mentioned. All right, great stuff, Jerry. Things could change this week with the depth chart, depending how things go with Thursday's first preseason game. Bob?
Always a fluid state. Thanks, Rich. We're almost out of time. When we come back, however, on Steelers Training Camp All Access, we'll give you our predictions on this year's Steelers record. So that's next. Stick around.
Welcome back to the FedEx Steelers Training Camp All Access Show.
All right, we are back and ready to go. We have a lot of preseason activity for you. Of course, August the 5th, this Thursday, 8 p.m. at Benson Stadium up there in Canton. It's the Steelers and the Cowboys in the Hall of Fame game. And then we will be on the air for the next 3 games here on KDKA. Charlie and I in the booth. We have August 12th, 7:30 at Philly. Then the home game to Detroit on Saturday the 21st before the finale at Carolina on August the 27th. And all these games will be streaming also on KDKA.com. All right, now it's time for some predictions. I know it's early. We can change these as we go. But, Charlie, you're first. Your season prediction is?
Right now I'm To be determined. And I know people are looking at this like, how can you not give an answer? It's just hard because I haven't seen enough of this football team yet. I need to see this team in game action, specifically in those first 2 preseason games. And then at that point, then I'll start to get a little bit more comfortable at this point. So, of course, I'm not as comfortable with my colleagues of mine at this point, Bob. So it's a little, so I apologize out there if you're watching this, but bear with me, and in a couple weeks I will give you a prediction.
I'm not confident either because there's so much unknown. But I'm going to say 11-6. I think everyone in this division is going to have a hard schedule. I think you're going to see a lot of head banging in the AFC North. But I think the Steelers, as they go through the season, their offensive line will come together. It's going to take some time, but Naji Harris can help them early on with some of the individual. Those 3rd and 1 runs that were stuffed last year, I think Naji Harris turns them into first downs this year. All right, Rich, Jerry, what do you think?
All right, thanks, Bob. Yeah, there's still so much unknown right now. Jerry, what's your initial reaction to the Steelers' schedule?
Well, Rich, unlike those two guys, I've seen enough of this team to know unequivocally they're going to be 10-7. but I will say this. I think with a break or two, that they could be an 11-6 team. 12-5 might be stretching it because they have the toughest schedule in the league. But I think at the very least they're a 10-7 team. They are better than people think they're going to be.
All right, I think most people will have the Steelers between 8 and 10 wins. I'm going with the high end. I still think that they have talent and will take advantage of an easier first half of the schedule. If they get off to a fast start like last year, I think 10 wins is very attainable. The back half is brutal, especially the final 6 games. Another factor for me, I think Ben still has a little left and is motivated to prove people wrong. But, Jerry, you said 11 wins. I'm leaning towards 9 wins more than 11 wins.
You know, Rich, I've always been a firm believer when you have number 7, you're never out of any game and you're never out of any season. Mike Tomlin's track record, 500 or better every year. That's why, to me, you got to lean to the high side.
All right, guys, back to you.
All right, that'll do it for this show. Remember, next week we're going to be live from Canton, Ohio. It's the Hall of Fame show. 5 Steelers are going to be going into there. We'll have that for you coming up next Saturday night live from there. So, for Gerry Dulac, Rich Walsh, Charlie Batchai, and Bob Pompeani, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you again next Saturday right here on KDKA and KDKA.com.